Welcome everybody to the June Arlington Board of Education regular meeting. Tonight's meeting is being held in compliance with Nebraska Open Meetings Act, copy of which is posted at the side of the room there. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. and take roll, please.
Chase Crowder.
Here.
Matt O'Daniel.
Here.
Bruce Shear.
Here.
Jen Warner.
Here.
Shannon Lamont. Here. Jason Earl.
Here. All right, very good. We have a quorum. Let's say the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I can do it twice a day, every day.
Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight, item 1.4, is approval of this evening's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you, Chase and Bruce. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Please.
Shannon Lamont. Yes. Jason Earl.
Yes.
Chase Crowder.
Yes.
Matt O'Daniel.
Yes.
Bruce Shear.
Yes.
Jen Warner.
Yes.
All right, very good. Motion carries. We are off and running. Item 2 on our agenda is welcome to our guests in public forum. It looks like we've got a pretty good crowd here tonight. Thanks for coming. If you would like to speak this evening, I see there's sign-in sheet right there, and there's looks like there's some people signed in on there. So if you'd like to speak with the board, if you're signed in, this is the appropriate time.
I think it's me.
Yes,
You guys are gonna be talking about voting in girls wrestling later. So I'm just gonna read what I wrote.
Okay.
Tonight you'll be talking about adding girls wrestling to Arlington sports. I am here tonight with these other lovely people in support of this program being added, even though I personally do not have a child of my own that would benefit from this. I want you to think about a few things as you are making this decision. Girls wrestling is growing fast. When my son Hunter started wrestling year-round in 4th grade, there were 3 girls on his wrestling team in Omaha. Today, that club has over 30 girls wrestling in Nebraska and all over the U.S. My family has been heavily involved in wrestling for over 15 years. We have been all over the U.S. and have watched girls wrestling numbers rise rapidly over the last 5 years. We have watched some talented girls become not only amazing wrestlers, but amazing young women who have overcome lots of obstacles to get where they are now. Data shows that girls would prefer to wrestle and compete against girls. When given the opportunity to do so, participation numbers grow tremendously in a short period of time. In 2018-2019, across the United States, there was 21,124 girls participating. In 1 year, there was an increase of 4,562 athletes. The number of schools with girls wrestling climbed from 2,890 and increased the following year with 539 more schools. For the past 5 years, girls wrestling has been the fastest growing high school sport in the country. Nebraska high school wrestling has experienced a growth increase of girls on the high school boys teams in the past 5 years, and this doesn't seem to be slowing down. Last year at the state tournament, there were 64 schools who offered girls wrestling. Since February, there have been more added, one of them being Raymond Central, who currently has 1 girl wrestler. We need to give our girls these same opportunities, as there are now 75 colleges across the country offering women's wrestling and giving these young women scholarships. Arlington currently offers basketball, wrestling, and swimming as a winter sport for the boys. We offer basketball and swimming for the girls. We already have a boys wrestling program, so adding a girls is not too difficult. We could have, literally you need to get some singlets and a coach for these young women. Adding girls wrestling also gives us the opportunity to add a girls division at our home tournaments, which is also rapidly growing. Putting Arlington on that list of schools who offer this program shows that we are moving forward with our program and giving our girls the same opportunities as our boys. I have watched, in the last 10 years, we've watched some girls quit because trying to wrestle a boy as you get older is very difficult. And we've watched some amazing young girls quit and walk away from it because it's just different. Bodies are different and the comparison, it's just not the same. And so I hate to see that happen, especially to a girl who has put in the work and she's very passionate about it. And she deserves that right too. And with it growing as fast as it has, I just feel these young girls need that opportunity and that chance to see if it's something that they like and something that we can move forward with. It's been fun watching them and fun watching them grow. Hunter's teammates that he had at the academy are going all over the country, and it's been neat to watch them. One girl just came back from overseas and had some amazing opportunities that she's getting this summer just because her school is now offering it, and she was one of the first in the state to win a state title for girls. So it's growing fast, and I think it's time for us to get on board.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. I appreciate you. Is there anybody else that wants to add to that? No? Okay. We had talked with Dr. Lewis and Mr. Shade a little bit before the meeting started, and I know you're trying to jump back and forth between games, and is that still the case tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so so what I thought we'd do is James had a handout for everybody, and we could jump down to this item in the agenda and at least have our discussion now while James is here and he can answer our questions, and then we'll take our action on this later on when we get to that agenda item. So that is actually, scroll down here to find it.
It's what?
10.1.
Oh, it's just not, this isn't attached. Okay.
Yeah, is discuss and consider the addition of girls wrestling and NCAA activity for 22-23 school year. Mr. Shada, do you want to just lead this off, and then the board members can ask whatever questions they have?
Yeah, but I guess
Okay.
we'll just have a discussion.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
hope to answer as many questions as possible. If I don't have the answer, I can sure get back to you.
Okay.
So why do we have to ask you? It's an approved sport, so you need to approve it for
Mhm.
at that level. So that's just a baseline. So as a school district, if approved, females have to decide if they want to wrestle in the female division or the male division each year. So in the state of Nebraska, the bylaws are written pretty interesting but tight. As a female, so our ladies here, they would decide if they want to wrestle in the girls division or the boys. You can do either one. And there are girls that wrestle in the boys, and that happen. And then there are quite a few, as stated by Mrs. Gilmore, girls that wrestle in the girls only division. Does that make sense? You have to declare that.
Got it. So Mr. Shada, we've had girls already wrestling with the boys, but that didn't require approval, but to do it girls only to develop, you have to approve that.
Yes.
Got it.
That's a good question. There's a lot of questions when this started to come on board at the state level. That's exactly right. For years, you could have you could wrestle with the rest of the program. You have the girls only division that has to be approved by you guys. Yeah, good question.
So once the girls decide, they have to stick with that,
Yeah.
like just for the year or for,
Yeah, you could come back the following year and say,
And do-
yeah, I'm gonna
okay,
wrestle on
that's
this
what I
side.
okay.
I don't see that happening a whole lot, but yeah, you can say. I guess what you would see is if you were
Wrestling
at a
with the
school
boys.
that you didn't have girls wrestling, you were a female, and you wrestled on the team they adopted, then you was more than likely to have some crossover.
What if you have a girl that decides at Arlington, if we adopted girls to wrestle with girls that wanted to wrestle boys, how does that work? How do you go?
It would be no
Doesn't
change.
no
It would be
change.
just as we've operated since we've adopted
But
wrestling.
can that individual, is she set in stone for that season? But can she switch the next season to this one? Got it.
Yep. So you gotta make a commitment to
So
the,
you have to declare at the start of the season and see that through, but then you can switch the next season.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep, that's exactly, no, these are good questions. That's kind of what point number 3 talks about. Per NSA rules, girls wrestling may only practice with the girls. This is an interesting, so this was a bylaw that almost went through and did not go through this past year. So, The female team has to practice with the female team. Does that make sense? And the boys, even if there's girls that have to practice together, there cannot be crossover at this time.
At practice.
At practice, yeah. And so some of these distinctions are there. So,
Are the seasons pretty much congruent, are they?
lock and step, yeah. What I would, as an example, it mirrors the basketball. So like girls go to districts, I believe a week earlier, in the state tournament that was at the same time. And so they have those sectioned off because you don't have enough officials to go everywhere if you have districts all at the same time.
There's also some tournaments that
Mhm.
have both boys and girls. So
Yeah.
our boys this year went to these tournaments. There was also a girls division that was being held at the same time.
Yeah.
They run the boys, and then the boys have, because they have to have a break and so many
Sure.
minutes in between. Then they ran the girls,
Got it.
which gave them enough of a break
Okay.
to offset that. So.
So two tournaments that we currently going to have a girls division within them, so we can put them on the same bus and go the same direction, which is great. There's quite a few. I looked all the other day. There's quite a few tournaments that are girls only division tournaments that are pretty close to the travel. We hope won't be too great. We hope that we could get into those. And they do. They just wrestle them round by round, and so you put your different weights in, just like you do the different boys, and you just cycle them through. You guys, I'm assuming you'll all see that. So, match limitations and tournament, I just stated it there. There's 10 tournaments and 8 duels. As I start to look at this and talk to our colleagues, getting the tournaments should not be super hard. We can do that for our girls. The duels will take at least a year or two to get to. Does that make sense? It's hard to sign up for a duel until you figure out, okay, we have a solid, this many girls are wrestling. Now we'll work on it. If we duel, we just picked up on the other day, DC West. So we're doing DC West on January 17th. All right, if they have 5 girls, we're gonna try to match up our girls with them if possible. We could run 2 matches at the same time, go from there. Those things, I can tell you without a doubt, we'll get as many darn tournaments as we can. The duels, you're gonna have to be honest with all of you, but it'll take us a little bit to kind of get those lined up. Does that make sense? Because those are a little harder. Weight classes are there. Those are different. There's 14 for the boys, 12 girls. That's the National High School Federation. That's what the state of Nebraska has. There's 1 class of girls. Obviously, there's 4 classes for boys, A through D. There's just 1 class at the moment for girls. Will that change? Sure, that will. As the growth in sport grows, there you'd have an A and a B. But obviously, look back through history. Not trying to date anybody, that we've all competed at different classes.
State still in Kearney.
No, it's at CHI or whatever it's called now. It's right there. So they ran at the same time.
Oh, that's right, never mind.
Still CHI.
Yeah, you still CHI? Okay, I was down there. I'm like, they changed it. Yeah. So I believe, and Coach Archie, like they ran a session. The boys and the girls section came in there, and there's a morning, there's a girls section, and the evening session. They rotate through. There are 111 school districts in the state of Nebraska that have adopted girls wrestling. That doesn't mean 111 have girls that are wrestling, but they did what is before you today. By you adopting this as an official sport, it gives us the opportunity to move forward with a team. Does that make sense? We have that, you are the first step there, and then we have to decide how that goes.
So, how many school districts are there in Nebraska?
249.
Well, so we're almost 50%.
Yeah, it's a large number, and I think I put it on here, but I don't have the increase yet because it's not from the state of
Yeah.
Nebraska, but seeing on different accounts, there's quite a few schools that have continued added this year. And so that 111 number is obviously growing.
Dumb question before we go any farther. So if we adopt this and say a school like Fremont or Arlington or Logan View doesn't have, I don't know if they do it all, but if they don't have women's wrestling, can they co-opt in? Or is this opening that up for?
It's a good question. That's a
co-op?
school board decision again, so you have to decide as a school board if you're open to that co-op. And I would have to check with the NSA if we can start a co-op or we're in the middle of a cycle and how that works. I think if both schools are not in a co-op and you agree to come to it, then you can do that. But that would be a decision by you guys to enter a co-op. Just like when we added swimming boots,
Right.
we had to agree Berlin had to agree, Fremont, and then Blair jumped back on, and their board had to agree to have it there too. So that's a decision that we can forward to you.
With there being no classes for girls wrestling, it might change the way perhaps look a little bit too. Because
Yeah.
everything else.
Well, that's what I
it
was
can change
thinking,
the
if
size
there's
of
no
classes,
class
but, yeah.
stipulation, and Fremont doesn't have it, at least it wouldn't jump us to class A.
Because they're all the same class.
They're all the same. Yep, they're all the same. Okay. Coaching right there, so we would look to hire an assistant, to kind of run the girls' side, that would be under the direction of Mr. Levhart, for both programs. We would, practices up there together, we're blessed with big space to put all that out, so that works really well. And so we can run all together. I put some projected costs in there, but the coaching piece is out of the negotiated agreement. The uniforms is, a really good guess. Those things change, okay, you guys know that. One was a really good guess. Transportation, so I think that'll be what it'll be when we start driving people in the
Yeah.
right? So, I just put best guess, I was honest, so I hope so. And then entry fee, so there's an entry fee, that's based on $150 for 10 tournaments, that's usually kind of a standard rate to pay for officials. So, and then we have around 8 girls, I don't want to limit it, but that's what we've had several meetings with them. Great young ladies that are interested in being a part of it, so. Questions you have?
Freshman to senior.
And we did have, junior high girls
I
that
was
came,
just
which
gonna ask you,
which
is
is
that-
fantastic for
does
them to
that
come hear about it,
include-
yeah.
How much do we have?
Yeah, so-
Junior high.
Yeah, and so junior high would, we
Would this be the same thing of if we add it to the high school, is it rolling into?
junior high does not change, and most of the time, they do their best when they go to their duels, their tries, their tournaments to pair up with the females together as best as possible. That's how junior high works in general, you do your best to get the weights close as possible to get, whether it's male or female, that doesn't necessarily matter.
So none of these other schools have a junior high girls.
You don't need it for that, yeah.
Gotcha.
Mr. Shea, if you have a girl that decides to wrestle with against boys, is she, for practice purposes, does that mean she has to still wrestle with the girls and not the boys?
She would have to
Say
practice
that
with the
again.
boys if she declares
Got
that
it.
she's wrestling.
So whenever you declare with your practice, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would venture to guess they'll make a run at that again and change that bylaw. And that was based on surely length. The weight matters in wrestling, obviously, and so you're trying to pair up similar weights. And so a lot of practice reads are like, okay, well, you throughout the gender, you weigh this much, you weigh this much, let's get you together and let's get you practice. And that was the intent of that bylaw change. It didn't go through. And so we'll work out those things together. We have good staff.
It goes without saying, since I'm Virginia, and I think the administration supports this.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
Is there anyone on staff who's shown an interest in assisting?
It's a great question. Probably this is one on the staff that's interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got so much free time. I'd love to.
We have some, we have great people. We have great people. We do have, some, that have backgrounds in, and I'll be very frank with you, we did look for a female to take the female's places. That would really match up well. And so, we're looking for that, if that works out. That's not a lot, but that's something that would really go well in our mind. And so we've had those internal discussions. And so they practice all together, and there's a lot of times that we're gonna be doing this on Saturdays in different places. So,
Well, I was gonna have the question, you have, Mr. Hart as the head coach, and then you have the 2 assistants.
Mhm.
You decide which direction you're gonna go with the girls or the boys, or
It's a good question.
are
So
you
some of
gonna
our,
stay with the boys, or?
well, that's probably a lot that Coach Hart and I have to talk about. There'll be a lot of times though that because of the size, we'll just see, we'll have to work that out. Sure, we hope that we can get Mr. Hart to everything else after manage his time too, so we can get through. So we'll work that out. I don't think we have a lockdown answer for that. It's kind of just dates and schedules and all this stuff. So I think you can make any more than
I was wondering to commit.
So what, the action tonight here, and please jump in here, Dr. Liz, if I watch this up. Don't have a more technical term than that. So if the board passes this, this allows the district to move forward and begin to organize the sport without an adoption or passage tonight. We're kind of leaving everybody
Yeah,
at
then
that.
the girls would have to continue to wrestle in.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah,
make
so
sure that
this
we
would give
were
us the
clear.
ability to use them to organize the girls' teams, see how many are out, make
Yeah.
sure that.
Start interviewing candidates and for the assistant coaching. Okay.
That was a good thing. It gives me plenty of leeway to start working on tournaments.
Yeah.
If we wait longer, then it gets really hard to get those things.
Just got a message that they can't see the east side of the room.
Which side is the east side?
Your side.
They want to see Bruce.
Actually, I don't think you can see Dr. Lewis. She was in the hiding there.
Yeah, those are great questions, good conversation. Any other questions for Mr. Shada? There's a couple other items on the agenda I think we're gonna cover quickly while you're here
A
too.
little better.
If you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, it's in my full support to adopt this. Obviously, you have to manage the budget and things like that. That's up to
Yeah,
your
I
purview.
was kind of wondering about that because we kind of had a deficit in the activities fund.
Yes.
And I just, it's not that I don't want the girls to wrestle, but if we have a deficit already, how do we balance that out?
Well, the coaches, and, uniforms are paid for out of the general fund. They're not for the activities. So that would be costs that don't come out of the athletics account that you see in activities, that would be equipment, would be on the other side, within the general fund.
Then the rest is paid.
Transportation is done. I would activities and pay the meet entries.
Yeah, meet entries would be about the only.
No question, man.
Is there any grants out there for bringing some?
I haven't heard of anything like that.
I'm not seeing anything come across. I've just seen
We can,
people that
Or outside source like the Booster Club or the foundation or money that can be asked for to help support this?
we can check into that. We haven't had those
Yeah.
conversations yet because it hasn't been added. So sure hate to ask for money for startup costs if we haven't.
We're not starting anything.
So this is the kickoff point.
Sure.
Good points.
Mr. Shea, by offering a new women's sport, if we proceed, does that impact Title IX or anything sports offers or anything?
great question.
Mhm.
It would include Yeah, I mean, we're perfectly aligned now. We do +1 on the team, so. That's easy. Yeah. So you technically could not, if we were to think about it, tennis, you'd have to have boys tennis next or something like that. Does that make sense? I'm just throwing out the sport. Well,
Not saying that.
We don't have courts.
I was just gonna say, we need to put it.
Coach Hart, I hate to throw you kind of to the lions here, but do you have anything to add to any of this? This would impact you a lot. I'd appreciate hearing a little bit from you if you don't mind.
No, sorry. I've just seen a huge growth in it, and I've talked with Mr. Shada several times and talked with the ladies that have come up to open mats. We had one on Tuesday. I had 3 girls up there working out, getting ready if this happens, or even ready for the boys season, so they can learn a little bit. I'm excited for the opportunity, to be honest with you. I think it's going to grow and it's going to be big, and it's going to eventually be a boys and a girls state tournament, just like you see with basketball separated out. I'm excited. If you ask my wife, she probably says she's not as excited as I am, but I'm excited. We have had several conversations about the logistics and how this works and looks and how that's going to go. So
This puts a decent amount more on your shoulders. Do you feel comfortable
Absolutely.
managing both? Okay.
Absolutely. In my mind, the way practice looks is we can practice at the same time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shada. We can practice at the same time. They just cannot practice against each other. So, I mean, as far as planning, I have practice plans from the last several years and even back to when I first started here to get going. So it's not as much extra work, that part, as far as the extra time on the weekends and entries and things like that. But now that I've had a couple years under my belt as a head boys coach, it's a pretty easy process to enter and get entries in and manage weight descent plans on the boys' side and now possibly the girls' side. So just the timing of it and knowing which way, and that would be something Mr. Shea and I would have to talk about in the scheduling, how that would work if we have a boys and a girls thing going. But I do like that we have a couple meets where it's both boys and girls, so that allows the entire wrestling staff, boys and girls, to be able to coach every athlete that we have out there. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a real, I mean, that's probably, if you want to ask my largest concern is that, because when we have a boys tournament, we have a lot of times 3 mats going, and we have 3 coaches, and a lot of you guys have been there, they're running around getting there all the time. Getting that managed and sending a girls team somewhere else with for sure a coach, maybe 2. We'll just, you know what that looks like, and that's a tough part. So, what does that look like? That's tough right there. And so we can see, I mean, we'll work through that, but that's a concern that my coach and I have talked through. How do we best serve our kids that way, especially when we're doing the competitive. So we're going to run multiple mats at least. So,
Yeah.
So we'll look at some scheduling. That's coach and I sitting down in the office working stuff like
All good? Anyone else? Hold on to those thoughts. We'll be voting on that after a while. We want to, while you're here, Mr. Shader, we want to have discussion on item 10.2, which is activity prices for going into next year. I know you want to get out of here and back into the game.
I do appreciate what
Yeah.
you guys do. Want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can.
We have it up, okay.
So the conference we're part of, Mr. Jensen could jump in, he's been part of these conversations. The Nebraska Capital Conference, many, I would probably venture to say almost all conferences around us, athletic conferences, activity conferences, have raised their entry fees for activities. Ours has not been raised in the 10 years I've been here, and I'm sure it's before that even too. And so the conference, we had lots of dialogue and conversation about how do you help offset some of the things that Janet talked about, the cost and the deficit we're in, paying for officials. And this is where we were at. We'd like to raise it. The conference has approved to raise it, so the conference tournament will look like this. But as a school, this is what we looked at having at our events for prices. And we looked to raise it a couple dollars and not do it for a long time, if that makes sense. I didn't want to come back and say in 2 years, hey, we went up a buck and that really didn't do a whole lot. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you go to a varsity game, it's 5 for a student and 7 for an adult. And then anything non-varsity is 5 and 4.
Is that what most of the other conferences are in price?
So the EMC, which is Blair, and some Midlands is that, Trailblazer is that, the Metro is for sure that if not $1 more on those. I guess we don't know the number, but you worry about volume. I don't know about the East Husker and a couple of those, but everybody in our little neck of the woods is there. We've probably held off honestly for 3 years. Most of these schools have gone to that 3 years ago. So it's not our favorite thing. We really didn't want to have that discussion today. We don't like to tax those people from the beginning. Mr. Finley, things you like
Historical reference, like the most senior principal in the conference has been there for 20 years. In his time, it has not raised from our current practices. So that's part of it. What's going on, offsetting the costs like we talked about. And we all wanted to, as a conference, come to it unified.
Yeah.
So it was approved in a 10-0 vote in our principals meeting. So we had discussions with Dr. Lewis beforehand about this is what we're talking about. We talked about helping to offset some of the costs. And historically, where we have been, and like James said, we don't want to come back to you in another year, 2 years to say, nah, let's bump it another $1 and just get into that pattern. So that's why the $2
And then as far as the rest of the passes, like the student season pass and the family pass is concerned, kind of thought maybe we needed to raise those too, but a survey of conference superintendents were actually about the highest one right now. Others are looking at raising to where we're at, so I'm not sure if that's a great idea at this point in time. However, that being said, a lot of schools charge every student who participates in activities a fee, and that's part of their cost of their activities. So
When you try to
I think
compare,
it's a bigger discussion.
apples to apples, it's kind of difficult, but, you also have many of our consistent, crowd members have season passes. It's very cost efficient for them to do that. You add on the Strive and all of those things that we've added on, and there's not a big offset cost to that, but that's, it's kind of an expectation now by our stakeholders, which is fine, but all of those things cut the gate. So there's a lot of factors that go into play here, so I appreciate you, considering that and supporting that. So.
Okay. And there was one more, let's give her name next to it, Mr. Shea, the annual activity report.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the project. So, yeah. I'm not being sarcastic either, I really don't. So this is always fun to kind of dive into the numbers at the end of the year about participation and activities. I do encourage you, if you have done so, attached is quite a few pages from all our different clubs and activities and athletics. Our folks do a great job of trying to kind of summarize those in a snapshot, so you're not reading a novel there. And just kind of go by the numbers in the first couple pages for you. We'll talk about activity. So when we talk activity, this does not include athletic. Does that make sense? We divide it out that way. Our girls' participation, was at 70% this year, down 6%. But when you look at, are we really down 6%? When you do the numbers, it's 2 girls less this year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we're doing a really nice job keeping them going. The boys are up 5%, 8 more boys out. So we're happy with what we're doing activity-wise. We're really excited. I went through my notes from last year. Last year we didn't get to do the big national conventions, state conventions at the FFA, FBLA, Skills USA, going to art shows. All those things didn't really go in person. So those are good things. And you'll continue to see this number grow because we get to go back to what we've all grown to love.
Right.
Athletically, we saw a great jump in our middle school rates there. We're up 13%, which obviously off a different year last year, you would expect that. So we're 81% of middle school students involved in athletics this past year. High school wise, we were down just a little bit, but once again, if you look at the numbers, it's not too much there. So in the boys, we had 64% of the boys out, and in the girls, 61. But that's literally a difference of 3 total kids, males and 3 female difference. So we're holding right to the pattern that they're in the total overall percentage stays. So it's a lot of time and effort. We talked a little bit about it with the opportunity to add girls wrestling, about going a lot of places throughout the year. I always want to take the moment to thank Dr. Lewis, Mr. Finson, and Mrs. Morgan. There's 179 student days. I went back through, and the admin team, we were at 195 events this year. So 179 days, 195 events. And I'll be honest, I'm excited about adding the 10 more tournaments this round. We'll figure that out, right? Don't throw anything out. But we're excited about doing those things. And our folks do a great job, and it takes a big team, whether it's custodial staff, people working gate, working concessions, working at head tables. And so I'm happy to take any questions you have on these reports, anything like that.
Mr. Shea, I just have one, just looking at the trend, and I'll focus on athletics here because this is what sticks out. Since 2009, 2010, you can see over the year we've gone from 75% for total students involved to 62%. Are you getting any feedback from students, parents, or anything on kind of the interest level lowering there, maybe reasons behind it, anything like that?
I don't have different interests from parents. I think this poll thinks a lot different ways these years than from 2021. And there's lots of different things that you can go do. And there's also lots of different clubs and things that are outside that they may be interested in doing that are great activities as well. having girls wrestling, we have another activity, having swimming as an activity opportunity for kids that are interested. Good question, kids. I don't have an exact reason. There's a lot of different theories. In general, nationwide, your girl participation is down quite a bit nationwide, and so some of those trends you start to see local. Boys is some of the same thing. The specialization of I'm only going to do this. I'm only going to do this sport, or if I do this, I'll maybe then go run track because I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket.
Are you seeing kind of a shift to that specialization over the past couple of years? More, I'm gonna focus on club volleyball, which is, obviously, we live in Nebraska, but volleyball is here. Just more switch into that specialization.
It is. It's something that way. Yeah. It's funny because then you read every article that comes out at professional level, and they say that they're only looking to. If you look at the draft, you look Coach Hart, Coach Francis, and not too late, but out of the top lottery picks in the NFL draft, almost all of them are three-sport athletes. But then you look at like the trend nationally, it's like I'm only going to play with a sweet first base on baseball. You know what I mean? That's not how those guys got drafted. Alabama's top players were three sports. So it's something that we continue to educate our kids, but that's see the national level.
Any other questions? Mr. Shea, thanks for coming in out of the rain and hanging out with us for a while.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to find that super great thing.
You got it.
Anything else you need from me?
So,
Thanks, man.
yeah. You bet. So that brings us back up to the consent agenda. So we have first, last month's board minutes, we've got the attached financials. Dr. Lewis, is there anything you want to add or pull out of there?
Yeah, you see in the financials, you have a corrected bank statement sheets from March and April. Everything had, we just had to shift the payment in March. That was the first payment for the lease purchase agreement. It was made out of the special building fund where it was supposed to have been made, but it got recorded in the bond fund. So we just adjusted those sheets to reflect that balance. And then for my review, we actually restated the balances, did not change at the end of anything, but a hot lunch, the deposit that came from the state. We went into receipts instead of transfer. It was kind of a confusing one for me. But bottom line did not change on any of that, just where you see that payment was coming from initially. In the bank, all four of those, depreciation, bond, PC Park, and special building fund are one checking account. So it just, sometimes when you're balancing those, it's a little more. So those are corrected. Didn't change the ending balances on anything. And again, those are just the bank statement sheets. You will see that we've made a little headway in the concessions, which has been pointed out in the activities fund with the credit from Pepsi. We're finishing a little bit closer to a positive balance there, which is good. That's been a tough one to make up. I think lots of people are having a little bit of difficulty making up, getting out of deficits in their concessions just because food prices are kind of and we had some meats that weren't as big as we thought they were going to be during track season, and so we don't have as many people buying concessions. So we planned with the best of intentions, and then it rains and you get 5 JV teams instead of 8 varsity teams or 12 varsity teams or whatever it is. But getting closer there. Any other questions that you already asked about things? I'm sorry, let's talk about the fact that we added another sheet here, so we've got percentages. Probably the primary thing for you to look at this one, under there, you see the percentage sheets, so expenditures there in the general fund. So far, we are 75% of the year, his past is coming off, and so we're at 68% of what we have budgeted to spend in elementary, 69% of what we have budgeted to spend in secondary, and district-wide, 51%, so other areas will make some ground there. So we want to trend below that 100%. And then we broke them down kind of into specific categories there, so you can see all of those are under the general fund except food service, that very last one. So it just gives you a little bit more information about where we're trending on that, and then near the top of that page is the receipts as well. So what we have budgeted for to receive and what we have received at this point in time this year. So
Dr. Lewis, so we're 75% through that as far as time period goes.
as far as time period goes, yes, 9 of the 12 months of the year have
Got it.
passed. So
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the high school maintenance? So that's the only one that stands out to me.
just a little bit there. Maintenance. High school maintenance there. Jen put the sheet together, so I think that probably was the
That is actually transportation, I believe. If scroll up.
maintenance and transportation. Yeah, I think that's in the transportation. There we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's our fuel and all of our.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say no more.
That's
That's all you need.
No idea that.
But that's the
it was gonna go
transportation, I thought.
to
Car
$5.
prices
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all the,
That's the regular maintenance on
maintenance
our
of the
buses.
buses and all that stuff like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And we'll continue to like evolve this to make sure it's very clear for everybody what we're seeing. And again, we're still working on moving from that bank statement sheet, like the ending balances and the starting balances of the bank statements, to just pulling like a general ledger sheet that shows you a little bit better information, more accurately what's in and what's out, rather than what's the bank statement at the end of the month versus the beginning of the month. So that's coming. We're I would say 95% ready to move forward with that. Just little things that we're trying to get cleaned up from past years that we just had to like hammer down and get them in the right place and for that project needs to be accurate. We pulled it in e-finance. When we pull that sheet, we can trust that it's going to be 100%.
That's correct, yeah. I think, that's absolutely.
Yep.
I like that sheet. I think that's a good addition.
Do we have, for what we paid auditor in 2021 and 2022, is that, just once that we pay them, or every time you call, do they charge? I mean, is it like the attorney?
So they have the flat fee that we've agreed to with the contract for the audit. So we
And
go
what
for
was
year
that?
deal with the audit. It changed each year, so I think it was like 11.5, 12.5, and 13.5. And then, so this last year, they had to, when they came the first time, they, the last 2 years actually, they had to assist in completing the reconciliations, and so the charge was extra for that. So, because that was above and beyond the audit. And with the addition of the leasing corporation, they consider that an extra fund. They had to audit, so there was a little bit of an extra fee for that as well. When we had the one day that Jen came out and went over some things with us, they did charge for that as well.
What did they charge like, per day?
It was about, we'd have to go back and look at the bill. We approved that bill last month, so we can go back and double check on it. But it was, yeah. It was a good solid day, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Let's vote, please.
Shannon Moore.
Yes.
Jen Warner.
Yes.
Bruce Shear.
Yes.
Heather Daniel.
Yes.
Chase Carter.
Yes.
Jason Mark.
Yes. All right, very good. Motion carries. Our next item this evening is the review of the annual district plan, item 5.
Right, so the items added in red is what has been accomplished since last time we reviewed this, which was shortly, it was in March, it was after our retreat. So in the area of budget, we're consulting with experts in the field of education finance to kind of plan for our need now to replenish our reserves as we directed more cash towards the building funds, so we can complete that project without having to go deeply into debt or cost of funds. So we're going to start working on that. So that's the next thing coming up since the last time we visited. If we go to the area of community engagement, the next thing that we have planned as far as that goes is a facilities tour for during the alumni event scheduled on June 25th. And then, not an added on here because we already had it, was an open house. For the new addition connected to the county fair in July. But the new addition that we had there was the tour scheduled for 10 o'clock on the morning of Saturday, June 25th. So we've had several people indicate that they're excited to come and participate in the tour. In the area of facilities, working on the punch list to wrap up the project punch list. If you haven't been part of a project, it's the little things that they need to go to clean everything up. Buildings and Grounds Committee met to go through what we needed to do for summer, anticipated repairs. We'll be updating the kitchen. You'll be taking a look at some of the things Julie is requesting there, in action item, with the excess funds in the hot wash account that they told us that we needed to spend on the kitchen. Intentional efforts to ensure building security walkthrough with Mr. Cavan, which happened 2 days ago. Yeah, Tuesday. It was Tuesday morning. Think about what that action was 2 days ago. So I'll have a report. He got us that report. It was not in time to attach to the board meeting. And then we have the entire admin team as well as our early responders and our not our early responders, our EMS and our SRO will be participating next week on the 14th and 15th in the school safety and emergency operations planning 2-day workshop. So that's coming up. And we're exploring the use of the transportation to find a system to track the bus routes efficiently and accurately, so we have a better, like a more accurate, real-time idea of who's on the bus at what point in time, when that bus is headed, and if we have stop on noise and things like that, and so you would be able to record those kind of things. In our student performance goal, they're extending free tuition for high school students at Metro Community College this summer, so I'm not sure how many people do on here taking advantage of that, Mr. Chancellor.
I don't.
And that's kind of on
They used
their
to charge,
own.
and that'll be part of my report, they charged $50, now it's part of the federal funds that Metro has decided to use them in that way to provide community college for free outside of books, things like that that still make cost. So there's still, the Gateway to College program is still one that they don't, because the wraparound kind of dropout prevention program, but besides that, all the Kickstart, the dual enrolled, concurrent enrolled classes would be no charge.
MTSS development, we can go back to another day, we've been talking about that a little bit. The past, where I was talking about MTSS because it continues to evolve, but we're in forward with area schools of similar enrollment to develop course offerings to assist our staff in becoming more proficient with MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, if you're not sure what that is. And then the art department received a grant for a plug mill to basically better use their resources and recycle the clay, so they don't have to. They can recycle the clay right now, but it's extremely time consuming. So this does it faster. It does it. It makes it worth recycling.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm behavioral and mental health. I was at the mental health conference with a review of different materials that are coming out and things like that last week. So it was a great day. There's a lot of great resources out there. It was kind of organized by ESU3, so we're really fortunate to be part of that systems of care grant. Just took advantage of that counselor on site, but to also be able to participate in these conferences and things like that. My attendance at that was free as a member of the executive board of Marxist, so we got to attend that without charge. So, within that $150, and that was just another step later. It was a great conference. Again, we're working on that emergency operations planning that's coming up, and that's a little bit about behavioral mental health, and it's a little bit about school security. So we're excited to learn more about that. And then we're working on introducing or allowing use of facilities by outside agencies that will also offer different levels of mental and emotional support. understands as well as long as they are able to participate in those will not be, some of those will not be student or school-sponsored activities, but bringing organizations in similar to similar to FCA or something like that, where it's not a school organization, but they meet non-school grounds, just giving them an opportunity to enrich their lives in other ways.
Mhm. There's always more going on when you think when you go back and look at these under district board meeting, district trainers. Lots of activities. Anybody have anything they'd like to add or questions?
How many community people outside of the school have fobs?
So we'd have to look at the audiences.
I mean, do you like go through that every now and again, make sure that we get our fobs back and?
Well, we all got new fobs about a year ago. So
Uh-huh.
at that point in time, all of the old ones, none of those were all in. And so we would have had to request a new fob. So we have a brand new spreadsheet that is started. We can look through them and see who's had one but hasn't used it for a while and deactivate them. So we can do that from site here.
I don't think that would be a bad idea,
Right. No, I agree.
just to go through and see if there's.
Yeah, there's not as many outsiders as there were initially when we had the last set of fobs, just because they're new ones. And so,
Yeah, I just think that would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in today's world and
Mhm.
yeah, where it is. Agreed. More thoughts, questions? Okay. Sorry, screen keeps rolling down. My gosh, Mrs. Morgan, you're up with the principal's report.
Yes.
Elementary principal report.
I'm gonna talk about this stuff and it feels like a decade ago.
Yeah.
It's like, we just ended school 3 weeks ago, but it feels like a long time. So 6th grade business finish up, they always go at the end of the year there. They, you can see their sales were $1,124. They spent $320 on expenses with an $804 profit. That goes into Always for Kids. That's what they use to do field trips and things like that with kids. For that sort of thing. And then you'll see final field trips, 3rd grade, went to the Wildlife Safari Park, and 6th grade went to the Stack Museum. Super fun days. We had some celebration days right at the end of the year there. Celebrating, they typically go down to the park in town, have some kind of a picnic or awards ceremony there in grade levels. 6th grade graduation, we graduated 62 6th graders. You can enjoy those friends in middle school next year. I think they're pretty excited. Maybe a little nervous, but pretty excited most of me. So 6th grade this year, we did a more intentional move up day in conjunction with the middle school teachers and paired them up with 7th graders. I think it was informative, and I feel like they got a better idea of what was coming up next. And that was really run by the 7th grade, by the middle school team hosting those. And then kindergarten through 5th grade got to move up and meet teachers in the next grade level as well. We had our very first Dream Day, and Dream stands for Day of Real and Engaging, Adventurous, Meaningful Opportunities. Lots of community members came in and presented on different activities. Mrs. Mueller really spearheaded this, put it all together. Kids had choices, so they got to choose like their top,
So cool.
I think,
I
6
love
activities.
that.
And
Yeah,
I will
love
say,
that.
walking through the halls on that day, and the middle school and high school kids were like, "Where was this when I was?"
What? Get over it.
Gotta keep it new and fresh. So there's some pictures there of some of the things the kids were doing. So it was a great day. And then bouncing into summer, we celebrated with some bounce houses. The end of their testing season and celebration of summer, we had Kona ice truck and some bounce houses. So I don't know who had more fun, if it was the adults or the kids, but the teachers were racing kids and it was fun. I thought I might end up in traction. It was pretty exciting. At the bottom there, I included some just data. It's a little deceiving because those first couple years there, first 4 years are not, it's a new testing system on the end there. So I am not 100% sure how close to apples these are, but I'm giving you the data as it's been presented to us from the state. So You can kind of just look there, math grade by grade, spring level, and you're comparing grade levels, not kids necessarily in those graphs. So just some information. Any questions or anything?
And that's going into that grade or that's that grade?
This is the end of that grade. So at the end of third grade,
Spring
by
year,
each of
spring
those years. Mhm.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Mrs. Moore, any questions? Mr. Pinkston? No, sir.
All right, we kicked off summer school this week. We have 12 students who are here working through, it's not all credit recovery. We've got some students who are here because they transferred in and the course sequence didn't match up. So they're getting lined up with that. Maybe they took, in other schools, that maybe they take biology 9th grade and then physical science 10th grade. That happens with some. So there's a variety of different things that are going on there. Power School update is probably not a big concern for all of you, but for those of you who understand, the SIMS that we have had, the student management system, is changing to Power School, which is I would say a lot more industry standard. So we're going through that whole process and going through the training. I wanted you to know, at least in that process, that communication with stakeholders outside of the walls here is a part of that planning, but we don't know how to lead that at this point because we're learning ourselves. So that's going to be part of maybe some, I don't know, we've done screencastifies or different things where we try to inform parents of how to utilize that system once we grasp it as well. But that's your student management system, that's your forms and reports and grade checks and things like that. Okay. And there is an app. So whereas with what we currently have, probably the most user unfriendly or user probably number of clicks that we get is probably on our website to check on students' grades. There will be an app that Power School has. It makes it a lot easier for you to have the access as an external stakeholder, as a parent. FBLA Nationals, wanted to highlight that. They're going to Chicago here at the end of the month. And the biggest thing, well, all of it is anytime we have a student competing, but we have quite a few students. We have 18 this year, and I think that's the most we've had maybe ever. I know at least, I think the information that I can recall is since 2015, that's the most, but I think even then it was 15. So they did really, really well. So shout out to them and shout out to Shauna for all she does for FBLA and setting all that up. I just put this in there as a placeholder for myself. We'll be approving handbooks in July, so that's on the horizon. And then here's the legislative bill that was tied to that board goal. Is LB 1014 is the zero tuition college. It's not necessarily that the wording of the bill says that tuition is free. It is, I think that community colleges have leeway in what they utilize those funds for. So this is what Metro has utilized their funds for, is to have free community college. And again, it expires May 2025, so it's not something that's just gone automatically. So already it was at a reduced cost, but this is another way to get students on the track with their post-secondary planning, with the caveat that we want them to do well with these classes because they count for their post-secondary planning. So we always try to wrap that around, and we try to provide and offer support for those classes, even if we are not the educator in that room, which is virtual with the ones that are not in the current enrolled, that we have the host teacher. So we always try to make that point because these are great things, and we have students who, my own child, who started with a lot of credits towards graduation for college. It ultimately saves money, ultimately gets you on the Head Start. It also can be a detriment if you got to retake a class or that's on your college transcript. So, we try to proceed with excitement and with the reality. So, so that's what we have.
What a great opportunity.
Yeah, and we have a good partnership with Metro. I can show you some, and some of how this ties into, some of our, the wording is lost on me, but our sequence of courses and how that meets some mastery level things with the state. So, I can show you that. Maybe I can present that to the next month. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason? So we'll move into the superintendent's report. The first item on there is the superintendent leave log for review. Dr. Lewis.
You can go ahead and take a look at that. One thing that will change on there at the bottom, it said I was at the NCTE conference meeting yesterday. I did not attend that. And I had to log that before, I had to get this posted before that, so I intended to go. But I got sick when I got doctor's appointments, and so I wasn't able to attend that. So when we get a final one for the end of the year, that will be removed from there, and then I've got intend to take my remaining 6 vacation days near the end of the month. So that will wrap up. So I probably have another one to just kind of wrap up the end of this year in July.
Thank you.
Final enrollment totals for the end of the year. So we ended the year with 698 students from where we began. That was 704 students. So you can kind of take a look at each grade level there. We lost 5 students in the elementary to movement and things like that throughout the year. And 1 student in high school. We were really consistent there, 7 through 12, until we got to that senior year. I'm sorry, to the end of the last quarter. So we lost something about last quarter. And again, we ended the year with, I'm going to do the optional. It's somebody people would math me after I've been already and stuff. So we ended the year with 93 net positive option. And October 1st, that snapshot said we were 94 net positive options. So that would be what our option fund is based on next year. And then that's not reflective of actually what our count would be next year. Once we get everybody enrolled and everything like that, so they take the October snapshot. So they're always a year in arrears on that.
Okay.
I'm going to take you a little bit through. Mrs. Art sent out a video for each of you to kind of review. It's a really short video on this bus right system here. And then we'll take a look at the quote. I just want you guys to all be aware that we're exploring this opportunity and that the costs associated with it. It's under the $10,000 requirement for people to go ahead and do it, but I want to make sure we're transparent with everybody if we're looking at doing this. So for the $6,000 a year, you get a pad and access in every school route bus that we have. So the bus drivers would be able to. It actually is a tool that helps us map out our routes in the first place, because you kind of draw your boundaries about where that route is going to be. And we enter our addresses into it too. So it uploads our addresses that are in your system, and then it kind of helps figure out the best routes and things like that, time-wise and things like that. And then as students are getting on, the bus driver would basically enter them. Just take a second to get on. So we would have real-time information in the office that shows who got on the bus and if somebody didn't get on. Or if they're trying to get on the wrong bus, it would get us an alert. Sometimes that happens at the beginning of the year with the logos, and bus drivers are still getting to know, or somebody gets on and they don't see that kind of, they're right there and but we say orange bus, everyone who's on the orange bus, and they all flood on. So that can help manage, ensure the young ones are getting on the right bus, and give us an error of somebody who doesn't belong in the route. And we don't have like advanced knowledge of if somebody was trying to bring a friend home and then it's close or something like that. Anything else that you'd like to say about what it can do for us?
It would just be the accuracy,
Yeah.
just knowing the kids on the bus, the bus driver, everything right now is paper pencil, and so that is just a tedious amount of extra work to ask the bus driver to do along with trying to watch the bus and know their route, and all the route is paper pencil, and so the route is in the system and literally click go, and it tells you where to go. So if we've got a sub that comes on that maybe doesn't know the route or isn't from Arlington, kind of simplifies it for them. Looking to hopefully maybe help save on some of the fuel with the routing part of it. That maybe can show us different options that we aren't seeing, as far as maybe how to group the kids a little bit better. Seeing it drops a pin for each of the kids who are listed on the bus on our district map, and then you encompass those kids. Being able to see all of the kids and where they're at will help us route better, because right now we're just going by addresses off of a map that was created, I don't know how long ago, and so it's hard to see them because you don't know, like,
You get an address and you
yeah,
stand out there in the
you
hallway.
stand there and you look at this map that has all the homes on it, but you have no idea which homes have kids that we're going to, so it's
Well,
just,
and then there's new homes. and-
yeah, so it's, there's a lot of positive, mainly it's the safety aspect of it, knowing where the buses are in real time, what kids are on those buses, when we're getting off. We're alleviate a lot of
Yeah.
questions of parents, calling saying, hey, is the bus running late? Yep, it is, and they're stopped at a train right now, so.
Yeah, and they can still radio in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So along those lines, and I watched the video, and it was a little unclear, but it kind of leads you to believe that there's a parent side
That's
of
what I was
this.
just.
There
saying,
is.
the way I-
See where my kid's bus is.
There
It's
is.
right around the corner, or
And the
it's
gentleman that I spoke
Yeah.
with said, we don't have to give
Launch
that out
it.
right away. We
Mhm.
don't have to launch it right away. We can launch just the attendance program. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Life 360. It is
Sure.
pretty much about the same thing. It will give the parents access to their child and their child's bus.
yeah.
So they can see the timing of the bus, so like if it's cold outside and you've got a long lane and you don't wanna stand outside in 20 below.
Right.
Mom can look at the thing and go, okay, they're about,
Time to
2
go.
minutes away, you guys need to head out, that's a positive thing. And then they can see when the child gets on or off the bus, so they know if their kid got on the bus at the end of the day, it was on
They
the
know
bus.
what.
So it can only be parents.
It's,
They're
yes,
connected.
you have to give them a code and allow them access to.
I just want to make sure that not everybody can just see where Arlington's
No,
buses
all
are.
around
Or you got it, you got it.
Or even from route to route.
No.
If somebody's on Karen's bus or whatever.
No,
they
and-
can't.
I would have to get a little more specific with
Yeah.
that one. When I spoke with him about that, I said, I'm torn with that. It is a very good thing, but it can also be a very,
Yeah.
I don't know how much
You better
extra
walk
that's gonna
before you
cause.
run.
Is it going to cause parents to be watching the buses, and if the route can change day by day, because if you don't
Mhm.
have a kid on, you might not go down that road, and our parents gonna call and say, how come they didn't go down the way they went down yesterday? Why are they going a different way? I don't know what that's going to potentially bring into the situation, so, I'd like to just start with the mapping and the attendance, and then see, maybe get
Because
a
it's-
bus to try the notification
Mhm.
and see how it goes. But yes, he said that it wasn't something we had to launch altogether.
After watching the video, I reached out to a couple of parents that I knew had issues from past years. One's got a kid in high school already, the other one's got a younger one, and both parents said the exact same thing, that it's something, one said they wish they would have had it when their kid was younger, because they purchased this cell phone, and did the Life 360.
Yeah.
The other one purchased a watch because their kid's so young, they didn't want to give them a cell phone, and did the Life 360. They thought that would be a good thing, just being able to look and, the parents running late to get the kid at the end of the lane, they can call somebody, the neighbor or somebody to, hey, can you go get the bus, because it's 2 minutes away.
One of the stores that said for a few years or whatever.
Yeah.
So then if they had a question a couple of years ago, somebody might have an issue, but we look at that.
I gotta be honest with you, I looked at it and I thought, well, why in the world didn't we get all this sooner? You know, because we can track our pizza coming on, you know?
I know.
Why do
For
our
the
kids?
Domino's guy.
Yeah.
10 minutes out.
Jen, and looking just technical at the quote, is that 15 total tablets?
It
This
is
is
5.
Got it, okay.
It's
So,
5 total tablets, and then it's the extra mounts for the 3 that we use as sub buses, so that those tablets can be put on whatever bus, and you can pull up any of the routes. So, for instance, if you were one of my drivers and you have a normal route, but you need to go drive Jackie's route, you type in Jackie's route on your tablet,
Right.
and you just drive Jackie's route. So it's,
But it is, and I had that same question, Chase, when I first read it, because it
It
says
is,
the Samsung Tag Active 3.
that must be the model.
The 3 is the model,
yes.
yeah. Because I did the same thing, I'm like, really?
and you did say that, so this is an annual cost every year.
Question.
But they do all of the upkeep, the upgrades. If a new tablet comes out that's better, that has a better thing, they'll switch us out. So it's a constant upgrade.
Do you
When
have
I
any
tried it,
training or do you?
There is some training as far as, I think it would just be Zoom of more of, this is how the program works, and then we would, just put it in. It seems like it's pretty, almost like GPS. And then, I did look into another program. Unfortunately, it was an amazing program, but it cost $30-some thousand. It was one with like an RFD card that the kids use. This would just be on the tablet. The route, the children's names would come up, so, you know, Chase is at his first stop and he knows he needs to pick up John and Sarah. He would touch John and Sarah because they both got on, and then he goes to his next route. And then it shows the next kid that get on at those stops. Obviously, you don't, if they don't know, you don't check them on. So, and then I can pull up real time and see all of that.
You made our next point is this is relying on the bus drivers
It
to do
is.
these functions.
It is.
So in looking at this, I know we're just talking about this, but I think it would be smart to make this a requirement for bus drivers.
Right.
If you want to drive, you have to use this,
Right.
or else we're buying something that's.
If
not
we get it, they're
reliable.
using it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're already using some paper pencils, so it's not like they're not doing
Right.
anything now.
Right, and this will save with some of the work with the routing, some of the work with the attendant, your, like I said, your buses, routes change, your kids change on the bus, and all of that paper and all of that okay, now we don't have these kids on the bus, now you've got these kids, you know, that just changes all the time, and there is a lot involved with the
The
attendance
safety
part of it,
aspect.
and the
It
safety
seems like
aspect of it, so
I
yes,
don't think
this.
there's value there.
My question, is this something that we could expand to sporting events with junior high?
I don't know, that was a question I would like to talk. This gentleman was amazing, he was very informative, very, the other guy with the $30,000 program. It was something else. I think that you can somehow, I don't know, it's gonna depend on what Power School is and how these two can integrate, but you can set up, so you could go in and put all of your volleyball players in as volleyball players, and we could potentially pull them over when they go on an activity, and that would be in their attendance.
So we could generate a list.
I don't know, and Bruce, one second, I don't know what we would gain. by
Well,
utilizing
We
that.
do paper pencil for that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the sports, the
Yeah,
coaches
that's-
do that, but it could be a potential, you know, it could be a potential.
Well, and not only that, I was thinking if you had access as a parent, middle school, when you gotta come here to pick up the kid, you can look to see
Got it.
how far out the bus is, of how long you're
Well,
gonna.
that's not-
You're not in that yet.
You gotta have a
Yeah.
kid that's
Yeah.
up there in that age. You got a few years yet.
So you guys are,
Administratively, would this just be on your computer, or if you were gone and they had a
So,
problem on the
way they
bus?
made it sound was that it could be on my computer, my laptop, and a tablet, and I could take that with me, and I would be able to log in and be able to see it wherever I'm at.
But yeah,
Or somebody else, yes.
I was just gonna
Yep.
say, can somebody else do it in
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
you're not there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The entire,
Yeah.
neat stuff. It sounds like we pulled it.
That does sound awesome.
Yeah. Again, Why didn't we think of this earlier? Yeah, somebody. Okay, thank you. Construction
Yeah,
project.
we're in the final phases of our construction project. You see lockers are almost completed
Look
with
good.
installation. Yep. They have to have the locking mechanisms installed in the members. We're waiting for the nameplates for the outside of the door, the number plates, and we're going to renumber the classrooms so they make more sense. Those are on order, and so those should be coming soon. They're getting through the punch list. Classrooms that had like radiators removed, that had pools and things like that,
Yeah.
patched and everything like that. So we're coming up to the end. They will be scheduling a meeting with us. I believe that there was a little confusion perhaps with budget and contingency and things like that in the transition between Andrew and Mike, because Andrew left and Mike is our new project manager. And so they want to schedule a meeting with Van Lawrence and his Herbert, and we will make it to kind of go over what that what the final bottom line is and what the final billing. We haven't been billed since the March because that's kind of my transition.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get that all hammered down.
Okay.
So we're in good shape there. Fuel tank at the bus barn, we got some developments there. So we're working with Knutson's to determine the price on the appropriate sized tank for us. And so the fire marshal said everything looks good on our application. They just need us to determine what size of the tank that we need to be looking at. So knowing that there's different requirements for different sizes of tanks and things like that, we're working through that. I've also talked with Paul Kraus and Dan Douglas about what it might look like if that was, a shared or joint effort as well. But we should, because Knutson's got prices to us yesterday, they were trying to get prices to us yesterday on I think we said a 2,000 gallon tank. So as soon as we get that, we can move forward to the next phase of what that will be.
Are they talking to us also about, doing for each bus, like card scroll so we can keep track of fuel consumption per bus?
No, we have not gotten that far in any talks yet, so we're not talking about what the pump would look like.
Is that possible? Is that something that could be done or?
Well, I don't know that it would definitely, I don't know that we would differentiate it from bus to bus, but definitely if it was a joint agreement between the village and EMS and us, we would definitely need to be able to keep that track.
Yeah.
I mean, we get one bill for all of our school buses. I'm not sure that
Tracking bus by
vital,
buses.
information that is for us to know exactly which buses.
Is more
Yeah.
fuel efficient than other buses?
There will be some
They're all
so it shouldn't be
gonna
about this.
Yeah, they're all gonna be expensive.
They're all guzzlers, let's just say that.
So I've been around some of these multi-user systems with gas pumps before, and what I have seen is, that pump can have multiple keys to it,
Mhm,
and each key has its own meter.
mhm.
So the school would have a key, the village may have a key, and that way you can accurately meter the fuel used and reconcile.
So we know who's
Yeah.
paying for what part of the.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah, I would imagine that's still the way they set them up.
yep, that's what we're excited about. We
Okay.
got an email yesterday, so that's where we're at with that. That's moving forward, so hopefully we have some numbers and some things like that next week.
Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Brings us into our committee reports. We've had one committee meeting, the ad hoc committee on enrollment trends and option enrollment met earlier this week,
we met Monday.
Monday.
Mhm.
Who would like to report on that meeting? Chase?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, Shannon, Jason, and I met with most of the admin team on this Monday the 6th. Just preliminary talks. We looked at our current option enrollment policies, our current option numbers as far as caps go on section sizes. We also compared that to other schools in the area. Most all of them have some type of policy in place. It kind of varies among schools. Some cap sections, some cap just overall classroom sizes. So we kind of looked at that. There's really no set standard there. It's kind of all over the board. We also looked, you guys just saw the year-end enrollments. So we looked at that. we're gonna continue, we'll probably meet in July again, continue the conversation. We're gonna look, Dr. Lewis and Sherry sent most of it already out. Look at option enrollment as far as financials, how that impact the district, what that has brought in over the past few years, and also compare that to, and I think, Dr. Lewis, correct me if I'm wrong, preliminary here, I think there's probably a direct correlation to the state equalization aid, and when we lost that, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that about 100%, because that was right in that time period, within about 3 years there, where that equalization aid was going up, where we were able to find a way with that hospital ordinance started to try and make some of that up with options.
So, yeah, but no, the conversation's continuing, we'll meet again in July, and that's gonna work.
It's a good conversation.
I don't know if Jason and Shannon have any more.
No, it was a good start.
Good.
Really good start.
Good. Thanks for your work. Takes us to unfinished business. The first item, 9.1 on unfinished business, we have policies to adopt on the second reading there that we looked at last month. I think since there are no changes to pull out of there, they become policies, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to add there, Dr. Lewis?
No, but there hasn't been any feedback on any of these. Again, these are all the legislative changes that we're required to make. And again, the one substitute teacher one, there's a paragraph that had substituted our policy about being, I think it was the requirements of, I forget what we changed on that, but it didn't matter. It was just, the whole thing didn't have to be changed for us. We just needed to like kind of clean up the second paragraph. That's in it, so.
Okay, brings us into new business. Item 10.1. We've kind of been over this and through it. Discuss and consider. Discussing.
Let's push it back.
Yeah. I'm impressed.
Make Tommy sit here a little bit longer at least.
He's sweating over here. He's so hot right now.
Discuss and consider the addition of girls wrestling NSAA activity for 2022-2023 school year. We've had a long discussion. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add before we entertain a motion? Would somebody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve to add girls wrestling as potential and as state aid activity for 22-23
Shannon and Janet. Bruce, you third. Been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, let's vote, please.
Rushier,
Yes.
Matt O'Daniel.
Yes.
Janet Moore,
Yes.
Shannon Woolman. Jason Art,
Yes.
Chase Cutter.
Yes.
Very good. Motion carries. Congratulations, ladies. Your senior success. Yeah.
But your requirement is to sit for the rest of the
No.
year.
Are any of you going to be seniors next year?
No.
Oh, dang it. I was going to say,
Yeah,
or
that's
you should
too
get
bad.
Mr. Shea to sign off.
Yeah. If they showed up.
You can go in a free evening for sure.
Enjoy your evening.
Or hang around.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Tommy, you gotta stay to the end of the meeting. It's hot.
Item 10.2 is discuss, consider, and take necessary action to set activity event prices for the 2022-2023 school year. Here again, we've been over this. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
I think, and Mr. Finkston already kind of added the context, and I think that context is really important. Obviously, everyone knows where the world's at right now with prices. I think there's a lot more context to this. I don't think we're responding to it a little bit to the world, but 20 years, you said, an individual, and this price has been the same. So I don't think that would be in response to what's going on, but more just updating what probably should have been updated years ago, I would say. So I don't. The only other thing, I think discussing the passes, I think would be important too. What are the current costs of those?
Our current costs, I think, are 145.
145 to seven, I think.
And then 60 for an individual adult, and then 40 for a student. But like I said, right now, based on what the conference superintendents replied and sent out, we're actually at a price point where they're probably going to be considered raising theirs too. So if we could until we get a little bit deeper into that, maybe just segregate prices for
Okay.
individuals right now. Just because it surprised me because I thought we were going to be low.
Got
And we were actually higher. So, and we haven't wrapped our brains around the idea of a student activity fee, which these schools do have lower pass
Yeah.
prices, but they also charge an activity fee, which we do not. So it's a kind of a different conversation than we thought that was going to be.
And maybe that's why our activities are percentage wise so high that kids actually go out because we put on the participation because we don't have that activity.
Well, what would that cost be normally? $20?
Mr. Fink,
Yeah, I think anywhere
That
from
is-
30 to 40 bucks is kind of what's kind of standard. And then that athlete gets a pass to be in, that's their pass as well.
So that is,
So it works that way for them, but
So-
it's a way that,
And I think
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
money generator for athletics. That's,
So,
Is that per sport?
no, that's
Just
one
one
time,
So a student in 3 sports would pay the fee
one time.
That's important.
That is important. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it's a mindset also is, do you want students to feel they're already buying the shoes and the
Right.
headgear and the whatever else and the parents, that I know that most of our parents, many of our parents pay for the family passes already. Is that something we want to pay an extra 20, 30, 40 bucks because your child in football, in wrestling, in
so when we look at it
swimming,
this way, you could, if you even charge $200 per family, at least you could go, I don't know, let's say 4 people, what is that, $28?
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
but you go put $200 in your gas tank, which one are you gonna have more fun at?
Depends on where you're going.
Yeah, that is the truth, isn't it?
okay, so I guess
I'm just saying.
my question is, so when they're buying a family pass, they could have 7 kids in their family
If they all live
versus.
in the
In
same
the
household,
household,
So-
and,
and that's the
You're better off
balance.
having multiple kids.
So what you're challenged with, what we're challenged with is we've got rising costs and we've got costs associated with additional things that we provide. I mentioned Strive. That's a great one. We don't get a whole lot of cost recoup in that. It's also, costs are going up for families. So if you raise prices for this and you raise prices for, well, does that become cost prohibitive and then I don't get to see my child perform? So those are all,
And
so
there's,
that's the
I can
balance. that
stay
you
home and
face.
watch them on Strive versus
Right.
buying this.
there's some people in the district that have the perspective of, I pay taxes, I should be able to come to
Yeah.
the sporting events, why do I have to pay to get in?
Yeah,
Because I already pay taxes on it.
yeah.
Then you also get those that say other schools, which I think you answered my thought and question is, when you go, the comments that are made is you go to an Arlington basketball game and there's not a lot of student participation in their mind
Yeah.
compared to when you go to, say, Blair. Granted, it's a bigger school, but I mean, every kid is there and they take up the whole side and they get a lot of participation. And they say the reason why they have that is because they don't charge the kids to go to those events. Is
And
it
they might
because
be-
they're doing,
I don't know if
because they're
Blair
doing
has
an
that.
activity,
They
activity deal, so
Right.
Yeah.
is it kind of washed out that way?
Because
you know?
in theory, almost everyone is involved in something,
Yeah.
so they pay their fee.
Yeah.
Right.
Now they can get into everything.
Right, so, is it the perspective, they say, well, they don't have to pay to get into these games,
But they bought themselves a pass.
but
they
they bought
already
themselves
did
a
it.
pass because of the fee, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question, that's,
Yeah, it's a great question, so,
I think a good first move is raising the gate prices and continue the conversation.
Yeah,
with
to
athletes
align
and
with-
everything.
to align with
That's
the
a lot,
conference.
that's a bigger
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
This will get us caught up
Appreciate
with
that.
our conference.
Well, yeah, and the conference
We're aligned
wanted to unilaterally have this conversation because we don't want people to be shocked when they go here and it's $7 and somewhere else it's $3. We just paid.
they're already shocked when the pump and.
Oh, I know. It's
Yeah,
all-
but
It's
isn't
all-
40% of the take on the, I mean, that goes to whoever's behind the counter, whether it's
Right.
like that or FFA or FBLA or
Who's
whoever.
That's when you get into the comparing this versus that.
Right.
Some of the booster clubs run it, so then it's out of the school. So
Right.
anyway,
But the
this is
kids
something.
Do we
Get
have,
benefit.
do we have a backup if we know that there's a family that can't afford it?
That's a good question.
I mean, we know, like a parent gets laid off work or it gets
Yeah.
cancer or is sick. Do we have a?
Here's what I would say. I would say that, we're in a community that if we know of those things, I believe that
Somebody
make
would
it-
step
I believe
forward.
we would make it happen,
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form.
Well, I know like Arlington Youth Foundation, we have a deal set aside for families that can't afford shoes for their kids to play in a sport.
And we can.
Those
some of
parents
those
can
things.
go to the foundations and it's a hardship case. It's not something that
Right.
a lot of parents don't want to do because.
Yeah, I
it's-
just
they
didn't
don't
know
wanna
whether
get
we
put
had
into that
something in
predicament.
place or whether it's just a,
Yeah.
I think we can figure this
Right.
out.
But
Well, it'd be-
going to the school.
I
they
know
can
we
go to
would
the
figure it
principal.
out. Our community would figure it out some way, shape, or form.
I believe that too.
Yeah.
I just,
I don't know.
I know that, but
if
I,
there's a specific
okay,
to
I
just
just didn't know.
wash them out of the way.
Okay.
We do have a student fees policy that we're going to look
Yeah,
at.
that's a
about
little
free
different.
movements, which is a little different,
Yeah.
because that's for the required fees, but
Right.
it would become an activity participation fee. Not, maybe not a family pass to activities, but a student participation fee. If that's something we begin charging, that would then start falling under that one, for the student fees policy, if it was a requirement to participate.
And so that would just be athletics, it wouldn't be.
No, it's all activities,
like
isn't it?
Music,
It's
It's
an
all
art fee,
activities.
that's
music and
a.
art, okay.
Yeah.
It's all activities, anything that's
Extracurriculars.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to set activity gate passes to $5 per event per student and $7 per adult with no changes to the student family activity passes. as discussed.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Janet. Any more discussion? Let's vote, please.
Jason Arnold,
Yes.
Chase Credible,
Yes.
Matt O'Daniel,
Yep.
Bruce Shear,
Yeah.
Janet Warner,
Yes.
Shannon Moore.
All right, very good. Motion carries. Item 10.3, discuss, consider, and approve purchase of the kitchen equipment as presented.
So we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, and Julie finally got some salesmen to nail down some prices for her. She and I went over to Johnson Crossing and met with their food service director and kind of looked at his kitchen setup, and she kind of knew what she had in her mind regardless. But what she is hoping for here is 2 new serving lines. One would be, they're each 3 sections, so there would be the hot serving portion, and then an in-between that you see there, what we call it, basically a utility counter that would sit in between, and then a cold serving line. 2 of those, like we have now, we would reconfigure those. So the price with that, a milk cooler that can open from the front and from the back, so when they need to refill it, they would be able to do that quickly without having to spin it around and refill it that way. A toaster that will, we do this for the morning breakfast quite a bit, a toaster that would toast 16 pieces of toast at once.
Sorry, it's
We had a conversation with Mr. Vincent about.
And I know they eat
Yeah.
toast in the elementary,
Yeah.
there's toast all everywhere, but I just think it's so different.
16 pieces at a time. So, and what you're seeing in front of you in the quote, I've kind of highlighted her favorites, so we can, I'm sorry, it says 14, I misquoted, 14 slices of
Well,
toast at the same time. Yep, so I've kind of highlighted the ones that Julie wants for the kitchen. So there's 4 different toasters that we were looking at there. She prefers the 14 slice toaster. There were a couple of different milk coolers. One of them had, I mean, when you took the $800 shipping, which I think was supposed to be for the entire order of one, those were within just about $100 of each other. And then you also see the planetary mixer that she prefers, that we've got highlighted here as well. But you see we have quotes for multiple varieties and things like that in there. So the grand total of the items that she would like to purchase, that we have cost estimates for, is $7,700. $790.
I think it's important here to kind of
17 cents.
include the backstory one more time?
Yes,
On why we're
so
looking at this?
let's do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not just talk about spending without talking about why we're doing it. So throughout the past couple of years, our hot lunches have been free to our students. And with that, the state reimburses them at the amount that they would give us for a free lunch if the student qualified for a free lunch. So what they have been reimbursing us for, based on what we are submitting as like we served 500 and whatever meals today, has been growing our account. The money comes in at a quicker rate with these
Sure.
reimbursements than it does when people are paying the bills and things like that. So we received notification from the Department of Education, Food Service Department, that we're only allowed to, and they strongly encourage us to not keep more than roughly 3 to 4 months of expenses in our hot lunch account, which for us is about $120,000. Currently, there's $340,000 in the food service program. So they want us to spend some and have planning to spend remaining money for the new kitchen. So we'll probably see a quote for kitchen tables and things like that as well. So otherwise, I don't think they will take it away from us, but they said you have to work on spending it. You don't need that much. They might even shake a finger at us, frown and shake a finger. So anyway, these pieces of our kitchen, it's probably important to state too, haven't been replaced since Julia's been working in the kitchen, and that's over 30 years. So these items have not been replaced in this amount of time. We've been talking with Lawrence to make sure that all of the things that she's looking at aren't going to require busting up the floor and upgrading the electrical, and our capacity as far as electrical and everything like that we currently have will support these pieces of equipment, and then this gets us closer to bringing that river and hot lunch money down to where they want it to be. There'll probably be a few more things that will help.
Yeah.
We just kind of have to have a plan and what we're going to do to students to keep them from saying, can't give it back. So
Everything's available. I mean,
we'll find out when
Yeah,
we train order
We'll get
items.
in about a year, Jason.
I don't believe that they would give us, I'm gonna say this and then I'm
Bids,
gonna back up.
pricing, yeah.
Pricing on things that they come get first, because she spoke directly to us. So
Okay.
hopefully, maybe
We
so,
do
but we
build
have to
equipment.
spend it, so.
What are we gonna do if you order equipment?
I don't know yet, we'll probably start processing things out.
All right,
We have to make sure we can get this in first.
yeah,
We-
right.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of certain lines and related equipment for kitchen to be paid from excess hot lunch account funds as discussed for $74,790.17.
I would second that.
Thank you, Shannon and Janet. Any more discussion? Questions? No? Let's vote, please.
Jason Martin,
yes.
Chase Credible,
Yes.
Matt O'Donnell,
Yes.
Bruce Shear,
Yes.
Janet Warner,
Yes.
Shannon Moore.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. We have a handful of policies that we need to reaffirm here. The first one is our anti-bullying policy. That's item 10.4 and policy 5415. We do this annually this time of year, right?
Yep, we do this annually. At this point in time, we would, because of the requirement of doing these annually, we would probably accept public comment on the anti-bullying policy. Public left.
Okay,
So, nothing's changed in this UC. It was last updated in 2021. So we reviewed it. We reviewed the last legal update to this policy within 2015 at the actual date of adoption. So we reviewed it as required on our 3-year cycle and then every year review as well. So
we need to take action.
I think we're just reaffirming some.
Okay. Thoughts, comments, questions before we move on to the next policy? Nope. That is item 10.5 and policy 6400, which is parental involvement.
And this details how parents can basically request to examine teaching materials, ask for request to be part of classroom if it's appropriate, to allow their student to be excused from testing, things like that, to monitor courses, assemblies, counseling sessions, et cetera. Parents have the right to do that.
Okay.
I just had a question on
Yes.
this one. So it talks about testing and it lists ITBS and CAT tests. Is that our wording or?
So like
that's
those
just the
are
wording
like
of
the
the-
examples that they give
Yeah,
us.
I just wanted to figure that. It's just
Yeah.
weird that it's.
When was the last time you gave an Iowa test of basics?
Well, right. I mean, that's why I was like,
I think I took that in
That
third
was-
grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just-
1982.
So it's like the language came out of statute.
Yeah.
It's just interesting though, isn't it? Yeah.
Good, Shannon?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
But yeah.
taken aback.
It's something that we all understand, so.
Right, they're like, all right,
You
whatever.
tell him when nobody will know what that test
I know.
was.
Okay, and then the next one, item 10.6 of policy 5416 is student fees and student fees appendix.
The index, yeah. So basically, this is our policy, which says if students are required to have specific things for a activity or a course that we don't provide for them, and they do not have the means, they can request for us to purchase that for them under the student activities account. Excuse me.
Does that happen often?
Are we?
No. No, it doesn't happen often. Once in a while, but there's, like I said, we have these great organizations that are also very
Stepping
willing
up.
to pitch in, so a lot of those needs are met before
Yeah.
students have to ask. And then there's a list there, the appendix, I need to change the date on top of that. Excuse me, appendix 1.16, 17. So yeah, let's go ahead and get that updated on there. But nothing else in here has changed, so we don't really have, set dollar amounts because you never know how much anything is going to cost, but the kinds of things that they can cost, and for the purpose of it, what would be, so.
Does it need to be so specific? I know it doesn't really matter, but like for PE, it says tennis shoes and white socks.
Yeah, nobody cares if it's off.
Yeah.
No.
Odd.
Purchase of white socks.
Just odd wording.
They all start white.
They all start white,
Yeah.
so you know one's white and one's gray.
That's why you
and
don't
one's
buy
black.
white socks, because you know they're not gonna stay white there.
Okay. Unless there's any conversation about this last item, going once, going twice. We have no executive session, so we can adjourn at 8:42. Karen, do you want to give somebody?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure
Turn off
that box.
No, it's okay, I have to end this room.